Good morning, I'm Barbara Kay, here with Susan Pertnoy. Welcome to Mosaic, Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County's weekly news magazine show. Mosaic explores Jewish topics here in the Palm Beaches and around the world.
An estimated 12,000 Holocaust survivors live right here in the Palm Beaches, one of the largest populations in the country. These survivors of the worst atrocity in human history are increasingly faced with poverty, mental health issues, and loneliness.
On this episode of Mosaic, we'll explore the experiences of Holocaust survivors, both in their haunted past and today as they face poverty and isolation.
We'll talk to Bruce Gendelman and Robert Miller, whose new book, Sifting Through Ashes, illustrates what they learned during a journey through Eastern Europe, where they encountered survivors, witnesses, and deniers of the Holocaust's atrocities.
And then we'll sit down also with two community members, one of whom is a survivor himself, about how our local Jewish community is providing comfort and care for survivors living in the Palm Beaches.
We'll be right back after a brief message.
From empowering Jewish college students to stand up to anti-Israel activity on campus, to enabling seniors and Holocaust survivors to age with dignity, transforming, inspiring, saving, Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County is doing all of this here and around the world.
They say that caring for the elderly is a profession of the heart. As the director of home health care at Morse Life, I know that to be true. When I see an older person feeling safe and secure at home, I know I've done my job. To make a difference, to show compassion, dignity, and respect, it's not just our job, it's our mission.
Morse Life Home Health Care.
Morse Life Health System, honoring senior living.
Welcome, Bruce Gendelman and Robert Miller. What a pleasure to have both of you on the program.
Thank you.
Nice to be here.
I love your studio. It's just beautiful.
Thank you.
Really thrilling. Listen, Sifting Through the Ashes, a book. You wrote the poetry and you wrote or you put in the photography and the paintings.
Yes.
It's a remarkable book.
Thank you.
I want to know what made you think that this is the time for you to do it.
Well, we're not sure it was. And the book being published sort of came up by accident.
By accident?
Bob and I took this trip to Eastern Europe, to Poland and the Ukraine, for the dedication of my brother-in-law's sculpture in Krakow.
Oh, wow.
And I asked Bob to come with me because we like hanging out together. And we thought when we went, we would have a project for ourselves. Bob is a brilliant poet, and I like taking pictures. So we had this thought of putting the book together.
Putting the book together, but you also wrote poetry that accompanies the book.
Yes.
What stimulated that?
Well, I was a poet before I, had to make a living, and I've enjoyed writing poetry as a way to express myself creatively, succinctly. And since this project was such an emotional one, we were trying to capture what the Holocaust looks and feels like today, being so emotional. Poetry and the images of the photography and the painting seemed like the best way to capture what we were able to experience.
You know, now is a very important time in life to present something like this. Can I have your feeling on that?
Yeah, most of the Holocaust survivors are disappearing. So what's left are memories, and what we view as art is a great vehicle, a medium for transmitting those memories. And what we're doing contemporaneously 70 years later. So our words spoken for ourselves, but really I think can resonate with the children and grandchildren of the Holocaust survivors who aren't there. And it creates a permanent record of that emotion and that feeling. And art can convey a message.
Yeah, it can, and actually a very vivid message if it's done properly. And what's in the book is extraordinary. We're going to go through that because I want our viewers to understand what we're talking about. But let me ask you something. What was the experience like personally for you? I mean, you went there, you went to Krakow. You went to a number of concentration camps. You met people that lived in the community. What was your feeling like when you were there?
Well, the The feelings can best be described as overpowering. We had the opportunity to speak to people who had never been able to tell their story before, people who had not only witnessed, but in some instances been forced at gunpoint to commit atrocities. And these were people who really had a need to tell their story, to be heard, and the power of that is just inescapable. But even the experience of being in these places, the thing that stood out for me is the power of place. That a
Power of place, I like that.
That a place can hold 70 years later the stench of evil. It's still there, and you can actually experience it. It's palpable.
Yeah. It's interesting, you know, when I was there and I was in Auschwitz, I remember walking before I got to the concentration camp, speaking to some of the people, and some of them felt they were deniers. None of this really happened. I mean, they made it all up. And what was your experience like?
We did meet a denier. We went to a massacre site in a field in a small town near Krakow with Father Patrick Dubois, with a young German man who was then forced to dig graves for the Nazis. And as we left, this old man who was the farmer on an adjoining piece of land started screaming at us, saying it was all a lie, the Jews made this up, no one was ever killed here, the Jews left by themselves. And in our book we have a photo of him and a poem called The Denier.
Yeah, Patrick Dubois. He was really incredible. You know, he had an interesting philosophy. Want to share that with our viewers? He really felt that the concentration camps really were not the significant areas alone that had the survivors or had the people that were killed.
Well, as a Catholic priest, but also as a historian, in the book he wrote, Holocaust by Bullets, describes that whole opening of genocide, but starting with 2.2 million bullets to the back of the head by Jews. And the only reason they went to the industrialization of the camps is because it was too difficult emotionally for the German soldiers to shoot so many people day after day after day. So they created these brilliantly designed evil factories.
So, but he felt the need to really expose more of the atrocities that really took place. He's been doing this now for years.
30 years.
Yeah, I thought it was incredible. I mean, he's an incredible young man, and he's got this tremendous passion to show evil to the world, and maybe if we show evil to the world, maybe the world will come together in a better place. I don't really know.
Yeah, he's a man, in my mind, of the greatest men, the greatest peacemakers ever in the world, in what he's done in his thoughtful way, and how he with the Holocaust, but he goes to places where Yazidis are tortured. He looks at genocide around the world, and he's truly a great man.
Yeah. On that note, we're going to just take a break.
Okay.
We'll come right back, Robert, I promise. We'll be back right after this brief message.
Coming up, we'll have more with Bruce Gendelman and Robert Miller about the Holocaust survivors, witnesses, and deniers they encountered on their journey.
The patients who come to us after illness or injury are often in pain and fearful of losing their independence. I make it my mission to treat them like family. I listen to their concerns. I help them heal and gain strength. My goal is for them to not need us. To know that I help them, there's no better feeling.
Morse Life Short-Term Rehabilitation.
Morse Life Health System, honoring senior living.
Prior to the break, you were going to make a comment about what Robert said.
About what Father Patrick
Yes.
Dubois said. And one of the most memorable things that he said was before we met some of the people that he introduced us to, he cautioned us, don't ask them questions like, how did it feel? And when you think about it, the insight of how could you even begin to ask a person who was there a question like that when it escapes explanation. How did it feel?
You know, you were going through this whole situation you have here in the gallery, explaining all of the shots that you have and the things that are in the book. And we had a guest here that was a person that was a survivor of Auschwitz. she was so moved by what you did that she had to leave. I mean, she could not bear the thought of sitting here and listening to some of your stories.
Either that or she really didn't like the art.
No.
Oh, all right.
See,
Okay.
the thing that
Bruce.
the thing is that, and even when we were there, neither of us are much of a drinker, but we found that we were drinking a lot at night because it's numbing. It is a numbing experience, and part of you asked a question earlier on about the timing of the book, and
Yes.
Bruce commented it was fortuitous in a dark way, the timing, because we were in Europe in August and September of last year, and we were literally at a train station at Budapest where they were closing the trains to immigrants who were fleeing for their lives. And throughout Europe and elsewhere in the world, voices were clamoring for power against the other. And the demagoguery, it's with us. It's never left. And to think that saying never again is meaningful without giving voice to the horror and remembering and speaking out over and over again, never again could be here.
As lawyers, both of us are concerned about being vigilant and hearing words that are said and the cautionary tales that the Holocaust brings in interpreting those words. When you have and understand how Hitler and the Nazis were able to do this, it starts with propaganda, it starts with words, it starts with information, and it ends up with people burning. And it's not a good thing that we have these types of thoughts in our current world.
Yeah, you did something beautiful in the book. You started the book in a very positive way. Even the poetry is, in a sense, nostalgic but positive. And then it leads on to the desperation at the very end. And then there's an element of hope.
Correct.
I think it's the same thing I say every time, so my producer, Colin, is going to have a fit. But the opposite of love is not hate, but the opposite of love is indifference. That is the big evil word.
But when you understand indifference and in mass societies and how masses of people are moved and what causes that, and the hate between groups and the otherness and powerful men exploiting that for their own purposes, whether they're religious or political, you end up in a dangerous world where people die.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, has anybody commented on the book?
Of course.
No, tell. Naturally, it's a book, I have to tell you, it's a value to have in your room, in your house, on your table. It is beautiful. It even has a wonderful scent to it, believe it or not, despite the tragedy. Nonetheless, how could we change the world? If something like this takes place, you visually make it easily expressive and understanding. Why can't we do something about it?
Well,
he's the poet.
I'm the mouthpiece, so I'll give it a shot.
Then I'll correct it.
Which is his job.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's how our relationship is founded. I think the lesson we're trying to convey, and we've actually done some other writing and thinking about this subject, is what we have erected as humans to deal with our darker nature, government, economies, religion, all of the things that we place value in, are never going to prevent atrocity. It is the individual and it is the moral voice of one person speaking out at a time that is the only way that I believe that we can prevent atrocities.
But through propaganda, then and now, through misinformation, a dangerous world exists. And unless information is properly expressed and facts are known, we run into trouble.
It's so true. You know, when you think about it, you know, when you describe the situation they had with the young children and how they picked the children up, and rather than spare bullets or anything, they'd whack the infants with their heads on trees and smash them to bits. I mean, you read some of the stuff that you have in here, you wonder how people can be so horrible in Syria, in Iran, all around the world, how they can do these awful things and that come away with it.
So there's a word that we use, inhuman.
What?
Inhuman.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a word that we use to try to comfort ourselves, because I think it's a false word. Humans engaged in the Holocaust. Humans are engaged in atrocities in Syria. This is part of who we are. It is also part of who we are, the people who are heroes and the people who stood up and the people who spoke out. It's all within us, and that's why I say and believe very strongly that it is up to the individual. Society will not save us from ourselves. We must save ourselves from ourselves, and from that have a good society, which means people need to speak out, they need to be vigilant, and we must not lose our capacity for being outraged.
And they need to be educated with the truth and facts, and live in a world where they're not starving or tortured or lied to. And that's the beauty of the United States and a secular democracy and our Constitution. But it needs to be protected.
On that note, I want to thank you both for producing this beautiful book. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much.
Coming up, we'll learn about how our local Jewish community is providing comfort and care for survivors living in the Palm Beaches.
From empowering Jewish college students to stand up to anti-Israel activity on campus, to enabling seniors and Holocaust survivors to age with dignity, transforming, inspiring, saving, Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County is doing all of this here and around the world.
We're here with Jenny Frumer, who is the CEO of Alpert Jewish Family and Children's Services, and Hal Gottschall. You're a board member there, and you also sit on the Holocaust Advisory Committee. You're also a Holocaust survivor. Can you tell us your story?
Sure. I'm also a hidden child. I was born in Holland. My parents immigrated from Germany in 1936. They came to Holland thinking that Hitler would never come there. My father died a month before I was born, and that was a little difficult for my mom because she was in a strange country. And they and a partner had opened up a sausage factory and a butcher shop. And what was difficult for my mom, she had to take care of me and feed me and at the same time work in the butcher shop, so it was one back and forth. My grandmother, who was living in Germany, came to take care of me in 1940. And she came, and very shortly thereafterwards, the Nazis invaded Holland. And after they invaded Holland, they rounded up many of the Jews. My grandmother was caught, and she went to a place called the Holländische Schambrouw, which is a place where they basically took the Jews and held them there for 3-4 days and then shipped them off to either Auschwitz or Westerbroek. So my mother lost her husband and then lost her mother. About a year later, my mom and I were caught and also went to the Holländische Schambrouw. Now, if anyone has read Daniel Silver, Daniel Silver is an author who wrote the book called The Rembrandt Affair. And the Rembrandt Affair is about a Dutch family. They were caught and they went to the Holländische Schambrouw, and one of the guards was bribed with a Rembrandt, and that's how the lady escaped. We also went there, and we were bribed, the guards were bribed with a salami. And that shows some people are worth Rembrandts, some people are worth salamis. So I'm not trying to make light of it. But from there, my mom realized that I would have to wear a star when I was 5 years old. And consequently, she befriended a Dutch nurse who also was a member of the Dutch underground. She asked for help, and this nurse placed me, with her family, never telling my mom that I was with that family because she was afraid if the Germans caught her, they would torture her. My mom went underground and she lived with a Dutch family that she could not move for 12 and 14 hours at a time.
Oh my goodness.
Because they were afraid that there were Dutch sympathizers that lived beneath them. I lived with this Dutch family. They were phenomenal to us. And I was one of the very, very lucky ones. My wife always says it's not where you begin, but it's where you end up. And I have ended up having a good life, a wonderful wife, 3 great children, and 9 of the most wonderful grandchildren.
That's a wonderful story. What happened to your mother?
My mom, she had a very tough life. Very, very tough. She had a stroke when she was in her mid-50s.
But she made it through the Holocaust.
She made it through. We came to this country in 1947. And she also, in some ways, was lucky because she had me. Many of our Holocaust survivors at the agency have no one. And that's the biggest problem because I at least could help take care of her. Well, many of the people in our agency were the only people that they have.
Which brings me to the next question. Jenny, as CEO of our Federation's Jewish Family and Children's Services, tell us about statistics in terms of the Holocaust survivors.
Well, contrary to popular belief, actually, we don't know how many survivors there are in our community because they've spent most of their lives living under the radar. But it's estimated that there could be as many as 8,000, and some estimates say even 12,000.
And how many does your agency serve?
Well, right now we're helping 500 survivors. And we help them in all kinds of ways. What we do know is that survivors tend to come forward only at the time that they need help. It's rare that someone will just call and say, I'm a survivor. It's kind of when they need help, when they are no longer able to drive, when they need help getting to the grocery store, when they're having medical problems, when they need someone to go with them to the doctor. Sometimes they need just a little bit of straightening around the house. Maybe they have a walker, maybe they can't bend or change their linens. So from the least amount of service they need to really the most amount of service, and that is to have someone there every day, help them dress, help them bathe. One of the things that we really work hard to do is to keep them out of more skilled kinds of facilities, skilled care facilities, because that confinement itself can be a trigger.
Oh, I would think
for
so.
Holocaust
Memories.
survivors.
Tell me, as a survivor, and I know you're intimately involved with them, what is their attitude today, or how do they deal with life?
Well, I'm on the advisory committee. The people on the advisory committee, you've got to meet them. They're tough. And they're great, and they look at life, it's like every day is a challenge. And they care about the entire group. Every time they meet, they're looking for what can we possibly do for the entire group. One of the problems, and I think that what we're facing today, is that there's greater need than we have the facility, the money to handle that need. Because what's happened is these people, as they're aging, they need more care. At the same time, as more people are coming from New York and up north down to Florida. And so it's a tremendous challenge to kind of offset what we have in facilities and financial facilities to handle it. One of the things that I do as a member of the committee is to help allocate the money that we have that are suggested by our caseworkers. And then we have to allocate that money, and it's a challenge because there isn't enough.
I'm sure, and there's the claims conference that allocates money to the agency. Can you talk about what
Yes, every year. The claims conference since the 60s actually has done a phenomenal job kind of negotiating with European countries and particularly the German government. And every year, and particularly in the last 5 or 6 years, we've really got significant increases that really have helped Holocaust survivors in our community. This is the first year in 6 years that the needs actually exceeded that which we could do to help survivors. And there was a period of time, a few months, where we actually had to reduce hours, which was, as you can well imagine, really challenging for Holocaust survivors and their families who have, generally speaking, outlived their resources, their financial resources.
That's nobody thought, we discussed earlier, nobody thought that these people would be able to live long lives when they suffered so greatly.
Right, and our age range right now, for those that we're currently serving, are from 74 to 103.
Wow.
And the majority of them are in their, 90s, late 80s, 90s. But we have the fastest growing, Palm Beach has the fastest growing number of child and hidden children in the country. And as a population of survivors, we're the second largest next to the New York metropolitan area.
Well, that really is quite astounding. The numbers are staggering. That's why the agency, it's so critical to support the agency and the Federation, because just from the Holocaust survivors alone, the needs are extraordinary.
Right. And we're so pleased that we actually now are really working closely with Federation, particularly around this issue of Holocaust survivors, and really looking to reach out to the community more and let them know survivors. In some ways, it's a paradox. They've tried to stay hidden all their lives, post-war, because they didn't want to ever be targeted again. But by the very same issue, we want to make sure that this is a population that's not invisible.
Right.
Because the needs are growing, and for the next 15 or 20 years, we actually are going to need to take care of Holocaust survivors.
We really are, and that's why outreach programs such as the one that we were at today at Bruce Gendelman's Gallery are so critical to get the word out, because we need to support the programs. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Coming up, final thoughts on Mosaic.
Thousands of community members come together through programs and services provided by Federation and our local partner agencies to create a vibrant and vital community in Palm Beach County. Together, we can ensure a vibrant Jewish future. Federation and you, changing the world together.
Barbara, Jewish Family and Children's Services does such a remarkable job for the Holocaust survivors. Their caring and support is unparalleled.
Yes, and the Federation really did such a remarkable job having them as one of the agencies in this community. They did a remarkable job. As I said to Bruce Gendelman, the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference.
That's so true. Thank you for joining us, and join us again next week as we take another look into the Jewish world. Goodbye from Mosaic.